Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for bringing a special aspect of holiness into our community by your joining in. Let's begin with a melody. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 again ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. And if you have a tallis, I invite you to join with me as we put on the tallis. The last few words are Lehit Atef B'tzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu litatef b'tzitzit. And we'll begin this morning with the Matovu on page 101. If you have the Siddur, page 101, the Matovu. And you may remember that the Matovu comes to us from the Torah. The phrase means, how beautiful are your tents, your dwelling places, O Jacob, the tribes of Israel. Your tents, the dwelling places. In the original context, that phrase refers to the homes, the tents of every individual family of all the tribes of Israel. Thousands of tents set up here, scattered throughout the wilderness in a certain configuration. Because one of the terms for the parallel of tent, Mishkan, is found here. And Mishkan also is associated with worship. At a certain later stage in our history, the Matovu was brought into the prayer book to be recited by people as they walked into the Mishkan, the synagogue. And people associate the Matovu with the synagogue. But think about your own home. It's your home and the home of everyone else joined in together in this worship that we have now on the internet. It's the series of homes knitted together like a tapestry that actually comprise our synagogue. The Matovu is referring to your home and your home and your home. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. Which means, how beautiful are your tents and your dwelling places, the people of Jacob, the household of Israel. You're invited to rise the Birchot HaShachar on pages 103 and 104. And as I mentioned before, if you do not know the brachot and you wish to say Amen at the conclusion of each bracha, you're invited to do so. Saying Amen at the conclusion of a bracha does two things. Number one, it fulfills the tradition of having said the bracha, but furthermore, it emphasizes the connection that each and every person has with someone else. There's an interplay. I'm speaking and you're listening, and on another occasion you'll be speaking and I'll be listening. It's the interplay, the interaction between each and the other. That is a moment of holiness. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'ivina lahavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tzalmo. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asa li kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tif ara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layoef koach. Today and every day, may you look upon us, God, and may all who see us look upon us with eyes filled with kindness, love, and compassion. Act toward us with kindly love. Baruch atah Adonai, who acts with kindly love to the people Israel. Baruch Adonai Gomel Chasemo Yisrael. And now we turn to page 112, the Psalm for Shabbat on page 112. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat tov lahodot la'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ulezamer l'shimcha elyon lahagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunatcha balelot alei asor v'alei navel alei higayon bechinor mizmor shir liyom haShabbat tov lehodot la'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ki simachtani Adonai b'fa'alecha b'maaseh yadecha araneim Magalu ma'asech Adonai mod amku machshavotecha mizmor shir liyom haShabbat tov lehodot la'Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm,
thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. The righteous flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. O dinuvum beseva, tishenim rananimiu, lagi kisharnoi tirlov latabo. Please turn now to the Baruch Shamar on page 122. Pardon me. Page 122. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Oseh v'reishit Baruch Omer v'oseh Baruch Gozer u'mekayim Baruch merachem al haaretz Baruch merachem al habriot Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireyav Baruch Elad v'kayom lanetzach Baruch podeh u'matzil Baruch Shemo. The singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid cheho olamim melech mishabach umufawar adayat shemo agadol Baruch atah Adonai nachol avatish bachot. We turn now to the Ashrei in a moment. The Ashrei on page 136. And you see the Ashrei displayed here on the screen. Next week, we'll be bringing the Chanun into our chanting. For now, we're still working on the Zecher Rav Tuvacha Yabi'u V'tzidkatacha Yiranenu line. Zecher Rav Tuvacha Yabiu V'tzidkatacha Yiranenu. Beginning the top of the page. Ashrei Ashvei Veitacha Od Yalucha Selah Ashrei Ha'am Shekachalo Ashrei Ha'am Sharanoi Elov Tehillah LeDavid Aromimcha Elohai HaMelech Va'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Bechol Yom Avarcheka Va'ahalala Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Gadol Adonai U'Halal Ma'od V'lig Dulato Ein Cheker Dor L'Dor Yishabach Masecha U'Gevurotecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha Ve'ezuz Norotecha Yomeru U'Gedulattecha Asapreno Zecher Rav Tuvacha Yabiu V'tzid Katacha Yiranenu Tehillat Adonai Daber Pi Vivarech Kobasar Shem Kachol Elam Voed V'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'atav Yad Olam Hallelujah. And now on page 141, it's the last psalm from the collection of psalms. In the Hebrew Bible, it's known as the Tanakh. We have a book of psalms, 150 psalms. About half of them are used in the official worship system, scattered throughout the regular daily service, the regular Friday night service, the regular Shabbos morning service, the holiday service, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and other special occasions. One of them is used. It's called Shir Hamalot. It's used when you say the grace after meals on Friday night or Shabbos during the day. This psalm is the last psalm. I think of it as a bookmark. It's as if you and I have been going through the entire Bible's book of Psalms, 150 Psalms, every single Shabbos morning, and we reach here, and it's the exclamation point. It's the summation, you might say, of all 150 Psalms, if we had the time, which nobody does. Nobody says all 150 Psalms during the day, because it's just too much of a task. So we suffice ourselves with this. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Bekia Uzom. Hallelujah, 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 Vig Vorotav, hallelujah, hallelujah, Karov Gulom. Hallelujah, 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 Beteka Shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, Benevel Vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 Betof Omachol, hallelujah, hallelujah, Beminim Ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 V'tzil Tzlei Shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, V'tzil Tzlei Truah. Kol Hanshama Tehalelia, Kol Hanshama Tehalelia, Kol Hanshama Tehalelia, Hallelujah, Kol Hanshama Tehalelia, Hallelujah, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Kol Hanshama is the ending of this sentence. Kol can mean all or every. All means the collective. All people, all living things can and will have a relationship with God. But kol can also mean every, which could mean each, which means each one of us, one at a time. And the question is, how do you find your own relationship with God? By which words, by which activities are you blessing and praising God? And I don't mean the narrow definition of using words in a book as a blessing or praising God, like the Baruch Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz. I mean in the expansive perspective within your daily life, as you go through every aspect of normal daily life. How are you with your own breath, your own behavior, your own speech, blessing and praising God? And following up on that, it's on page 142, and I think of this sentence often on the English side. It's the third stanza down, if you have the Siddur on the English side. It's one short stanza. You, Adonai, our God, it was you who chose Abram, took him out of Ur of the Chaldees, changed his name to Abraham, and found him faithful.
What is more personal than an individual's name? Think of your own name. See yourself as being named by God. And how will you respond in your daily life? Not on Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m., let's say, or Friday night, lighting the candles, but on a Wednesday, on a Friday afternoon, on a Thursday evening, whatever it might be, in a parking lot, just in your own home. How will you respond to the expression of the Jewish perspective that God has named you individually, privately, personally? Kol Shema, every individual can have an interaction with God that is of a private and personal nature. And now on page 147, Shochenad, page 147, the Shochenad. It's the first red arrow on page 147. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranenu tzadikim b'Adonai laisharim nava tehila b'fi yesharim tithalal uv'divrei tzadikim titbarach uvelshon chasidim titramam uvekerev kedoshim titkadash uvamakalot rivavot amcha beit Yisrael lodo lahalel leshabech lefaer lormim lader levrach lekales. I'll call the ratio of Tish Bachot, Tavi ben Yishai, Avdecha Meshichecha, top of 148, Yishtabach, Shimcha, Lord Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech, HaGadol, HaKadosh, Bashamayim Uvaretz. Ki lecha noe Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei avoteinu v'imotenu Shir u'shvacha Halel v'zimra Ozu memshala Netzach gedula u'gvura Tehila v'tiferet Kiddusha u'malchut Brachot v'orot me'tav olam Baruch Adonai El Melgado Batish Bachot El Aodaot Adonai Niflot Habucher Bishrei Zimra Melech Elchei Olamim. Amen. Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Amen. Ba'alma divrach yirtev u'mechmachotei b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayerecho beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman karif v'imro. Amen. Yehi shemei Rabba mevorach la'olam u'me'amayo. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shmei kedusha brechu leila min kol brachata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiram v'yom v'imero. Amen. We rise. Baruch on page 149 and 150. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Voed. Top of 150. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer v'orei choshech Oseh shalom u'varei hakol.
Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. And as we are seated, we turn to the bottom of page 153 on the English side for just a bit, prior to the preparation of the Shema. One small English stanza at the bottom of page 153, the little red arrow. In God's goodness, the work of creation is renewed each day. As the psalmist declared, thank the Creator of the great lights, for God's love is everlasting. O God, cause a new light to shine on Sion, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. Baruch atah Adonai, Creator of lights. Or chadash al Sion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer hamorot. On page 154, you see the bracha begins with the phrase, "You have loved us deeply." The prior page speaks of God's loving us by creating lights throughout the universe, the sun, the moon, the stars. Beauty of the physical world is representative on one level of God's love for us. And now at the top of page 154, we see another and a different expression of love by God for us. And if you have the Siddur before you, look at the first paragraph and count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, and you see a sentence beginning with the words, enlighten our eyes with your Torah. And this is another and different expression of God's love, that we have the capacity to use our eyes through study of Torah and Jewish tradition to bring a sense of light and illumination into our beings. Learning and study and growth are sources of illumination, expanding the head and also the heart. And now you know why, after the concluding blessing on the bottom of page 154, we're ready for the Shema and the Ve'ahavta, speaking of love. Gathering the tzitziot together. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyot le'artzenu ki el poel yeshuot ata uvanu v'charta mikolam v'lashon v'keravtanu l'shimcha hagadol sela be'emet l'hodo l'cha ol yachercha be'ahava baruch atah Adonai habocher b'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Page 155, Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayo hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha yom ha'levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha v'alechtecha v'derech v'shachbecha v'kumecha u'geshartam lo ta'al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben enecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
The middle of page 156. It's the third paragraph of the Shema. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'marta aleihem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdeihem l'dorotam v'nanu al tzitzit hakanaf petil tachelet v'yalachem l'tzitzit Uritem oto, uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam, v'lo taturo acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, l'man tizkaru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedushim leloechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Asher Otzeiti Etchem Meretz Mitzrayim, Liot Lachem Leelohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem Emet. On page 157, on the English side, the last two stanzas. Truly, you are the ruler of your people, a mighty sovereign who takes up their cause. Truly, you are at the beginning and you will be at the end. Aside from you, God, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. On page 158, in the center of the page, Mi Chamocha. Mi chamocha poelim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, noratilot osef elem. Shira chadasha shibchu geulim l'shimcha savat hayam, yachad kulam hoduvim lechu v'yamro, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezra Yisrael, Uftechinu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go aleinu Adonai tzvot shemo, Kadosh Yisrael. We rise for the Amidah. We begin aloud on pages 159 and 160, and then a few moments of silent prayer. The traditional text concludes on 166, and we've been practicing the 3 small steps. And there's a little phrase, it's from the book of Psalms. It goes like this: 3 small steps backwards and 3 small steps forwards, and then we begin the official Amidah. But first, a little practice. Adonai, Sifatai, Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. And we Jews are in different homes and different locations right now, but our feet are moving in unison and adjusting for time difference wherever we may be. Our mouths are offering words of song and prayer in unison. And excitingly, and this may be the best part, each person's thoughts are different, and her own or his own, even as the body is moving and the words of the prayer are coming out. Once more. Adonai, Sifatai, Tiftach, Ufi, Yagid, Tilatecha. And now we're ready, beginning on 159, 160, and thereafter a few moments of silence. Adonai, Sifatai. ufi yagi tilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekonei HaKol Vezocher Chaste Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Goel Livnei Vneihem Laman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Ufokenu Mashiach Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Meitim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mashiva Ruach Umarit Hagashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim O Matir Asurim O Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Bagevurot O Meida Melach Melech Memit O Mechaye O Matzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atalachayot Meitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim.
Please continue your silent prayer, and in about a minute or so, Neil Sass will join us for the full Kaddish, the Kaddish Shalem, which will be on page 167. But for now, just a few more seconds of silence. And now, concluding the early morning portion of the service prior to the Torah reading, the Torah service, we have the Kaddish Shalem, Neil Sass. It's found on page 167 in the Siddur.
Iskadal, Shema, Rabal, Bialma, Dibra, Kurisevia, Makusevika, Kunab, Yamakunaka, Yedika, Basis Roa, Baka, Always Makari, Yamaru, Amen, Yeheshme, Rabal, Magorach, the Olam, Meo Maya. Yisparach, Yistabach, Yisparvis, Romavius, Nasavius, Adarvis, Alevis, Alos, made the Kudashop, Reaku, Lay Lam, and Kobra Kasa, Vashirasa, Tuspakasa, Vadecamasa, Dami, Rumbi, Homovi, Yamru, Amen, Tiskabel, Salosa, Urus, Ahon, Takobi, Yisrael, Kadam, Avu, Hon, Tibismaya, Yamaru, Amen. Yeheslam Rabba Menshemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yakal Yisrael V'yimaru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromov Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'yakal Yisrael V'yimaru Amen.
And now on page 168, we are asked to rise the ark is opened, the Vayihi bin Soa. It's on page 168. Please rise, Vayihi bin Soa. Vayihi bin Soa Haaron, Vayomer Moshe, Koma Adonai, Ve'afutzu oevecha, Ve'anusu misanecha, Mipanecha, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udavar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato. And now on page 171, Shema and Echad. Wait, one sec. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Tinramama Shema Yaktav, Lecha Adonai Agedula V'Agavora V'Tiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hahod, Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Cha Adonai HaMamlacha V'yamin aseh l'chol rosh, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachabo, lahadam raglav kadoshu, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachabo, le'har kodsho, ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. Shkoyach Ariel. Thank you, David. Our Torah reading today comes from the parsha known as Vayakhel. If you have the Chumash, it's on page 560 in the Chumash. If you have a Tanakh, it's Exodus chapter 37, verse 17. Chapter 37, verse 17. And in a minute, you'll see a picture coming up on the screen before you. It's a picture of the tabernacle or the Mishkan. And we're talking now here of the design and the construction phase of the worship tabernacle, the worship center. It's called the Mishkan. 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, we read two different Torah readings. One was named Teruma and one was Tetzaveh, detailing in very, very specific precision thousands of elements that would go into the planning stage. And now we have a very lengthy Torah reading today, which talks about the construction phase. And the material described in the planning phase 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago is repeated here in this week's Torah reading. And This is an artist's rendering of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And you know that an artist's rendering is only as good as the imagination of the artist, but it gives us something to get a sense of what the Mishkan may have looked like. And what strikes me is how the Mishkan and the tabernacle is configured. And you see that it is centered amidst the other tents of the Israelites dwelling throughout the wilderness. But there's also a perimeter, a wall, you might say, separating the Israelite encampment from the inner precinct of the Mishkan or the tabernacle. This wall is made up of many different fabrics strung together. And this year, as I was studying the past few weeks, I've been thinking a lot about the Mishkan. Something occurred to me that's a little bit different. The goal of the Mishkan was to get all the people of Israel on one common plane, a shared perspective that their daily life was very close to a spiritual center. And as they walked about in their daily lives, taking care of their families and the animals and their ordinary tasks, they were to see themselves as being very close to a shared spiritual center. That's a very powerful message. And the element that divides or separates, but also allows closeness from the Israelites, the average guy, you might say, to the spiritual center, is a wall of fabric. It's just a wall of fabric. And it occurs to me that we Jews have our own fabrics. And that's why I have here on the Torah stand, or the Torah table, a couple of different talasim. This is a talis. This comes from my grandfather to my father to me. And I think you've seen it. It looks fairly familiar. White with black stripes, fairly typical. And this is a white talis with blue stripes. My parents gave me this when they traveled to Israel once. I was about 20 years old when they brought this back to me, 22, I suppose. And this is the talis that I wear on the high holidays, and it's beige with a little bit of a green design running through it. And you've seen this because we've shared Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur together. And many of you have a talis of your own, and some of those talitot or talesim, both words are accurate, talitot and talesim, are larger or smaller, and they might be white, might have blue, might have different colors and so on. Some of the more modern talitot or talesim have designs embroidered or even painted on the fabric. Every person, every Jew, can have his or her own private little element of fabric. And that fabric, when placed upon the shoulders, can propel an individual towards the sacred and holy spiritual center of coming close to God, of seeing God in his or her own life. In these past months, we've been separated from each other. And as people, we have not come into our shul, our shared spiritual center. And we've been on our own individually. We have the capacity during this solitude, not aloneness, but solitude, to reach inside ourselves. And the garment, the talis, is a tangible aid in propelling us to see ourselves as this close to God. The reading for today, excerpted from a very long Torah reading, is just a few sentences. It's one paragraph, and it's on page 560, verse 17, and it talks about the menorah. And you know, of course, that at this stage, folks, the menorah has how many branches? You got to get it right. You got to get it right. How many branches? Please say it. The correct answer is 7. Exactly, 7. Menorah is 7. And that's what we're talking about here in this little passage on page 560. And you see, obviously here in our own shul, on our bima, beautiful menorot. We have this menorah here up on the wall, and it's parallel up here on this wall, and the 7 branched here on the ark. 7. God's transforming chaos into the beauty with time of creation and designating a short span of time to be unlike any other. That's the menorah. Vayas et menorah zahav tor miksha asat menorah yirecha v'kana giviyah kaftorah ufracha mimena yu v'shisha kanim yotzim mitzidah shlosha knei menorah mitzidah ha'achad u'shlosha knei menorah mitzidah hasheni shlosha giviyim mishugadim b'kaneh echad kaftor b'kaneh echad kaftor b'ferach u'shlosha giviyim mishugadim b'kaneh echad kaftor v'farach kein l'shesh lakanim hayotzim min hamenorah uv'hamenorah arba'a gvim mishugadim kaftor efrachecha v'kaftor tachat shnei akanim mimena v'kaftor tachat shnei akanim mimena v'kaftor tachat shnei akanim mimena l'shesh lakanim hayotzim mimena kaftorem uknotam mimena yu kulah miksha chad zav tor v'yaset neiroteha shiva umakachem umakteha zav tor kikar zav tor asa otah v'et kol keleha. And you see here a second Torah. And again, we have an abbreviated service, otherwise we'd be reading from the second Torah as well. Why? Because we are now on the Shabbat that is 2 weeks away from the arrival of Pesach. And we are announcing that the month which contains Pesach is soon approaching. The Hebrew word for month is Chodesh. You might remember the name of the minor holiday, Rosh Chodesh, which is the first day of every Hebrew month. So this is called Shabbat HaChodesh, the Shabbat announcing the month, and that's why we have a second Torah, because the month in which the holiday of Passover occurs is very, very important. And when we come back to our hopeful norm, we will be reading occasionally from that special second Torah indicating something going on in the holiday or the calendar season, or the cycle, I should say. Tomorrow actually is Rosh Chodesh. It's the Rosh Chodesh of Nisan, the first day of the month of Nisan, and you know Passover is just around the corner. Just one sentence of Haftorah study. If you have the Chumash, we're on page 1291, page 1291. And this is a very lengthy Haftorah, and I'm not going to chant it, and I'm not even going to go through the entire Haftorah because it's one of the longest Haftorahs in the entire cycle. I just want to touch on one small note. Ezekiel is famous. He's one of the most well-known of the prophets in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. Ezekiel was a Kohen. Ezekiel witnessed the destruction of the temple by Babylonia. That's the first temple's destruction. For 600 years, ordinary daily Jewish life had been lived and marked and experienced through the system of tabernacle and temple ceremony and conduct and comportment for the average Israelite and for the Kohen and for the Levi. For 600 years, every aspect of daily experience had been filtered through the Kohanic ritual. And Ezekiel is a Kohen. The temple is now destroyed, and he's asking, how on earth are we going to live our daily lives? And he puts forth a message of someday, and I really hope it's soon. That's his wording, I think. Someday, and I really hope it's soon, we're going to rebuild the temple so that we can get back to normal. And you and I as Jews know how frustrating it's been this past year, just 1 year, where we've not been normal. And we're hoping to come back to normal soon, so we can identify with Ezekiel's frustration. I'm going to stop there. I think that's enough of a note of understanding, of touching on the Haftorah associated with what's called Shabbat HaChodesh, and that's what today is. We'll be offering a Misha Berach, a prayer of healing, and then we'll be lifting the Torah and dressing the Torah. If you know of someone in your own life who is in need of prayer for healing, for recovery, please mention that person's name along with the names mentioned herein. And we say, Misha Berach Avatenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachav Aleah Hu Yivarech Raped Kol Cholim V'Zeh Kolel Et Moshe Aaron Ben Fega Zorak Ben Leah Miki Bat Cecilia Adina Batya Bat Elisheva Will Tucker Daphne Bat Adina Batya Velvel Ben Root Monica Knight Anthony Arnold Minya Elka Bat Sarah Mordechai Ben Zelda George Patinos Pat Cockrell Tom Bastoni, Avi Moshe Ben Mendel, Chana Sarba Peshalea, Armuda Ben Gisha, Beth De Palma, LaClaudia Thomas, Sprinza Bat Bashi, Miriam Bat Bashi, Louis Rodriguez, Shoshana Bat Millie, Yaakov Avron Ben Chana, Roxanne Anthony, Yafa Bat Rivka, Caleb Bat Shoshana, V'kol Elisha Niskrim Hayom Meher Hash Amen. O God, as you have blessed our fathers and our mothers, and you have strengthened them and sustained them, bring forth your touch of power for healing and strength for growth, lifting up all those who are ill, all those who are afflicted, all those who are weak, all those who are suffering, and sustain them. Favor them with your closeness, your touch, your majesty, O God, and bring healing of the body, of the spirit, of the mind, to all of your children, all of those known to us and known only to God. Lift them up. Assist them in walking forward. And may this day, this week, be the beginning of a new future wherein they are stepping forward into a brighter and more hopeful future. For the veterans who've suffered grievously that we might live more safely and securely, let there be an end to anxiety, to fear. Let there be a beginning of increased hope and confidence and promise in the future. Strengthen them of body, of spirit, and of mind, and heal them that they may walk forward, crossing this threshold on into a bright new day. Favor all of your loved ones, O God, with strength, good health, and growth. And we all say, Amen. We rise as the Torah is lifted and dressed. V'zot ha'torah asher sam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai. Eretz Yisrael b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Eretz Yisrael b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Dundai, 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 dai, dundai. Dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai. Eretz Yisrael b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Eretz Yisrael b'li Torah, hikegu b'li neshama. Dundai, 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 dai, dundai, 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 dai. Not yet. Not yet, not yet. Not yet. On page 177, the bottom of the page, a prayer for our country, and then on top of page 178, a prayer for Israel. For now, the bottom of page 177. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets, O God. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say, Amen. The top of page 178, the first line, followed by the English paragraph. The Avinu Shabbat, the prayer for Israel. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Borech et Medinat Yisrael, Reishit Tzmichat Geulatenu. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. Prayer for the first month. So you want to put that in? I'm going to stand over here with this one. Or you can stand next to me. Your choice.
I'll stand next to you.
Okay. On page 180, the prayer for a new month. The month that's coming tomorrow is Nisan. And it occurs tomorrow, which is Yom Rishon. Yiratzon mefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu shetachadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba l'tova v'livracha shetachadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba l'tova v'livracha v'titen lanu chayim arukim chayim shel shalom chayim shel tova chayim shel bracha v'titen lanu Chaim shel parnasa, Chaim shel chilutz atzamot, Chaim sheish behem yirat shamayim, v'yirat chet, Chaim shein behem bushach lima, Chaim shel osher v'chavod, Chaim shetevanu ahavat Torah, v'yirat shamayim, Chaim sheimalu, Mishalot liben l'tova amen selah. May God, who wrought miracles for our ancestors, redeeming them from slavery to freedom, redeem us soon and gather our dispersed from the four corners of the earth.
May the entire people of Israel be united in friendship. And let us say, Amen. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Yeh B'Yom Rishon Haba Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael L'Tova. The new month Nisan will begin on Sunday. May it hold blessings for us and for all the people of Israel. May the Holy One bless this new month for us and for the entire people of the house of Israel with life and peace. And we say, Amen. With joy and gladness, Amen. Deliverance and consolation, Amen. Put it back. The Eitz Chaim on page 184. Eitz Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha Tarchei Noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Amenu Chadesh Amenu Kekedem. We remain standing, Aleinu, on page 205. Aleinu is on page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kugoye haratzot velo samanu kimishpachot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim V'Yosei Haaretz U'Moshav Yekaro B'Shamayim Mimal U'Shchinatu Zo B'Gavei Meramim Hu Eloheinu Ein Emet Malkeinu Evezulato Kakatu b'Torato v'yatata yom v'ashevota ela b'avecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat ein od. Kakatu b'Toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz b'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. I apologize, I just lost my voice for a moment. Those reciting Kaddish are invited to rise. Kaddish is on page 207. We remember Morris Schwartz, Ethlyn Schaffer, Madeline Buckman, Ernest James Baer, Simon Miller, Louis Slavin, Louis Barr, Joseph Loeb, Anita Rips, Lena Goldrich, Mary Sherman, Max Mazel, Leon Capeluto, Ida Carol Mazel, Rose Gottlieb Rips, and we remember with sorrow the recent losses sustained by members of our shul. Leonard Capeluto, Ronnie Hoffman, Madeline Eplin. If you know of someone who's recently died, please mention that person's name aloud in your own home at this time. Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash, Shema Rabba, Amen. Be'alma, Divra, Chirute, Yamlich Malchute, B'chaye Chon, V'yomechon, V'chaye Dechol, Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'izman Kari, V'miru, Amen. Yehe, Shmei, Rabba, Mevarach, La'alam, Ol Almei, Ol Mayam. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitaleh, V'yithalal, Shmei Dekudesha, Brichum, La'ela, Min Kol, Berchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiran Ba'alma, V'miru, Amen. Yehe, Shlama, Rabba, Min, Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. May God bring all those who are marking the loss of their loved ones a sense of confidence born out of faith. And may you all know that the members of Ahavas Chesed join in offering you love and support. In a minute, the Kiddush over wine. People are familiar with it. It's the Vishamru paragraph. Just a couple of quick reminders. Tonight, Havdalah on Zoom at 7 o'clock. And don't forget that we are setting our clocks ahead an hour, so we lose an hour of sleep tonight. So whether it's midnight or 1 or 2 a.m., it becomes 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. respectively. Tomorrow morning, 10:30, that's 10:30 after you set your clock ahead. We'd love to have you join us under the shul portico for Krispy Kreme, for donuts, for schmoozing, for gathering. Please bring a chair, wear a mask. We are sitting outside. You should have received an email from me from the office yesterday with a link to a survey. We are, under the guise of the reopening committee, surveying our shul membership. So please take just 3 minutes. It's 8 or 9 very quick questions. And respond to the survey in the link yesterday's email about potentially reopening the shul. Thank you very much. And mention to your friends and relatives that they need to respond to that link as well. Tomorrow is Krispy Kreme, Monday is Tanakh, Tuesday is Spirit, and the topic for Spirit is who is Elijah and why are you bringing him into your home? That's Tuesday's Zoom Spirit topic from 5 to 5:30. We're going to conclude with the Vishamru over the grape juice. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam brit olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti li'olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz Uvayom hashvi Shabbat v'inafash Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Borei peri hagafen. Why don't you do that, Motzi? Loud.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Homotzi lehem min haaretz.
Shkoyach to David for all that he does with us, with the connections and the computer and the live streaming and bringing up that picture, that artist rendering of the Mishkan today for the service and helping me in many ways. And Hagba, Shkoyach. Shabbat Shalom, may you all be blessed with health and peace. Looking forward to seeing you soon. For now, good Shabbos.